Thank you, Jay. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jimmy, and I am an alcoholic. I am so grateful to be with you guys tonight. Um, I appreciate Jay so much for inviting me to come on and share a little bit about my experience, strength, and hope. Um, there's one thing that I've learned since being in AA is that I'm tickled that my story is just not a whole heck of a lot of different than most folks, because when I got here, uh, there was no way anybody drank like I did or was as sick as I was, and nobody understood. And after being around for a little while, you figure out that you're just not a whole lot different than a lot of folks in the program. I'm just a garden variety alcoholic that is grateful for the life that I have today through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, the principles. Um, I'll share a little bit about, first of all, just I guess a little bit about how I drank. Um, I come from a long line of alcoholics on both sides of my family. Everybody drank for every reason. And very few of us ever got sober. Um, my dad attempted and was doing a great job. He died a year after he stopped drinking and was working the program. So he planted the seed. It was just several years later before I, um, I guess, decided for myself. I was 46 when I finally got around to trying to do this thing right, because I was so irritable, restless, discontent, and consequences. So, I had a lot to take in, because I had been calling the shots all my life. God was never really a factor to me. I did like a lot of guys, young guys, do with a big family. I dressed real nice, and I drove the best cars, and I made my family look really nice in church on Sundays. And it was really important to me that all the other folks in church looked over and thought, well, that right there is how you do it. And I certainly did. I did a good job of it. But I was miserable. Every now and then the preacher would preach a good sermon that made sense to me, and I liked it. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't be drinking again come Wednesday, regardless of how great the sermon was. So I never intended. My plan was never Alcoholics Anonymous. That me accepting or me admitting that I was an alcoholic was not going to be how this was going to be done. I was going to get it in church, and I forced it, and I tried it, and I did everything I could do, and I just never did really get any sort of peace or happiness. I had moments, and life was okay at times, but I always went back to a drink, and I always went back down that road of just being miserable, even when everything looked so great on the outside. God had blessed me with everything I had asked for. He blessed me with the big family and the beautiful wife and the big business and the nice trucks and all the horses. I mean, everything I had asked him for along the way, which I guess I thought that was his job, was to give me what I want, just like everybody else should do, because I'm so selfish and self centered. And, he did it anyway, in spite of me. Um, but I was still so miserable. I was a really miserable guy, and I drank a lot. And, but after um, I was, it was about a little over 10 years ago, I had once again wound up in jail, and was feeling really um, like, here I am again. I've done it again. And what am I doing why can't I get this? I knew I had heard, and I had done a little stint in AA back in 1999. That was purely to get the judge off my tail. It was to get my wife to settle down, my kids to think everything was okay. I never really did it for the right reasons, but I did hear a lot of things that applied to me. It's just, as I said before, I was never going to admit I was an alcoholic. That was not the plan. I didn't like the in my mind. I just thought I was better than that, and that was not going to be how this old boy was going to not drink anymore. It just wasn't going to work like that. I was going to get it in church, you know. I was going to get it in church, but I couldn't. And so I went back out and I actually made it 4.5 years, gritting my teeth, dry drunk, and miserable. I stayed out for 10 years. And then by the grace of God, I got about 10 years ago, I got in a little trouble with my alcohol, and there I was again. And, something, there was finally some desperation. After all the years of drinking, there was some desperation I felt like I had never really felt it before. I think I had felt along my life a little hopelessness here and there, but nothing like desperation. I knew what to do, didn't want to do it. And I thought, well, just maybe, I finally admitted, I said, maybe I'm an alcoholic. By the time I was 46, I'm a big proof guy and a big trust guy. It's real hard for me to take anything in a whim. I don't trust people. It takes a long time to really get. I keep you at arm's length, always have, and that goes back to some childhood stuff. But I always had a hard time trusting people. And then I needed a lot of proof. I had to have a lot of proof for anything that I see that's either working or not working. Well, by the time I was 46, and after all the problems and all the troubles and all of the just constant trying to get back to a drink like it used to be 25 years earlier, I knew that I could possibly be an alcoholic. And so I had that first thought that maybe, just maybe, and I was willing to look at it a little bit harder. And I'd had that little stint in there in '99, and I heard some things that did register to me, that did make sense to me, but I just wasn't willing to look at it. I was just not going to be that guy. But this time, because of the desperation I'd had in my life, I thought just maybe, So the first thing I did was when I kind of got my bearings back, I went straight to a meeting here in Tupelo over on Broadway Street. And that door was 10,000 pounds if it was 20, And I opened that door up, and of course, I knew several folks that were still hanging around in there from my stint 10 years earlier. And, but they were so welcoming and smiling and looking for me to, they so glad I was back, that I had lived. And, the first thing that I did right is there was a good friend of mine in there that I approached him, and I said, Tom, I need you to be my sponsor, please. And at that time, Tom had about 23 years, and I knew I couldn't pick on anybody. I had to do this thing right. So I was going to get me a gentleman that had been around for a little while and kind of understood the way things went. I needed that person in my life. I didn't need any sucker anymore, that I could get anything I wanted over on them. I needed to be real and serious about this. And Tom said, sure, we'll see, we'll try, and we'll see how this works out. Well, so we did, and we started working the steps. And um, the biggest thing was, of course, me keeping the plug in the jug. And I was willing to keep the plug in the jug and work the steps. Work step one every day to the best of my ability. It's very fresh. I had to do things totally different than the way I did the first time I came in here, because I was still manipulating back then, and I didn't want to be the manipulator anymore. I wanted to understand. I wanted to I heard the word God in AA, and it was a little bit scary to me because of the way he and I went back and forth out in the world. There's just so much to share about that, but I think it's too much. But my relationship with God was not a relationship. I thought that God was just pretty much a character in a book. But everything that was good happening in my life, it was me doing it. Everything that was bad happening in my life was a punishment, and it was, sent from God. So I just had this really bad perception and a very distorted view of God and, the Bible. I needed to, I needed a new start on my personal life. And we started the steps. Tom and I got close, got very involved with my home group. And as I've worked along, I started asking more questions. And, I was willing to give this program some time. I wasn't going to just rush into it and in 3 months say, well, I'm not as sober as I want to be. The heck with it. I'm going to go back to the old way of life. The old way of life was miserable for a long time, and I knew that I didn't want to go back to that, but I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know, because I had stopped drinking so much over my life for so long. I just over and over and over again, and I was fearful. I was very fearful of doing it, trying to do this my way again. And so I listened to my sponsor, and I did what he asked me to do. And he was very forthcoming with the program and how it works. And I stayed really involved with what I needed to do to get sober. The biggest thing for me was, a God of my understanding. I didn't really get that at first. How am I supposed to have a God that I'm supposed to understand? There's one God. He's the God of everybody. He's the big gray-headed man in the sky with hands full of lightning bolts, and he just zaps you when you do wrong. That's God. And that was, to me, who God was. As crazy as that sounds, that was my young, youthful perception of God. So the cool thing was, I started asking my sponsor questions about a relationship with a God that I understand. What does that mean? What is that I understand? And that was a process, and it's been a wonderful journey. So many things have started to come to light over the last few years that I am so grateful for. I had been in Broadway, the meeting, and I still go. I was there last night, but I go to that meeting often. But that's where I started, and I went a lot. But there was a time about 3 years ago, I guess it was 3 years ago. He said, I was praying, and I was a little complacent, but I loved my meeting. But I just felt like things were, I don't know, just a little complacent. And he said, so I was praying about it, and God said, this isn't the only meeting in Tupelo. And I said, that's right. That is right. He said, let's just go out and look around some. So I started going out and looking into some other meetings, and I went to the Daily Reprieve where I get to see Jay on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I visited We Are Not Saints, and I met so many good, nice people there. So, I mean, he started surrounding me with just all sorts of different uh, alcoholics from everywhere. It was just like this. Why he pushed me and nudged me to do that, I have no idea. But he nudged me into that, and I've started growing more and more because there's different sobrieties. Different groups to me had a little different sobrieties going on. And just having that one group there, it's kind of a newcomers deal at Broadway, which I very much needed, and I still need. I still need the newcomer in my life. Reminds me of where I come from, and I don't ever need to forget what it was like, ever, 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 ever. And so, as I visit around, I have felt my spirituality growing. Um, and then I had this, not I guess not too long ago, this revelation. I was thinking about when I first got to AA, how I was being punished. This is what I get for being the kind of drunk, I have become. You've made me an alcoholic. Now you're going to make me go to those AA meetings. This is another one of those lightning bolts. I get it. I know it's just a punishment for the way I act. I get it. That was God. That's what he did to me all the time. Poor, pitiful Jimmy. I had to blame it on somebody. It wasn't my fault. And God was as easy as anybody to blame, I guess. So, coming to the realization after being around for a little while, I thought back about how God has revealed himself to me in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and getting to know people. He has been so kind, and he has been so loving, and he has watched me, and he has laughed at me, and I can see him now. Right now he's so proud. He's got his hand on me. He's looking at me with this smile that's from ear to ear. That's awesome, because I also remember when I was crying with my hands, and he was sitting there with his hand on my shoulder with the same look on his face while I was going, I know I'm an alcoholic and you're punishing me. You're making me an alcoholic now. So he's got this same little look on his face today that is just the sweetest thing. And I know that he loves me so much, and he loves me because I appreciate the journey. I don't regret anything in my life. I do not regret any jail cells. I don't regret anything. And I've had what a lot of people, I think, would look at and say, wow, man, how'd you make it through that? That's horrible. That was awful. Well, going through it, it was pretty tough. There's been some things that were pretty tough, but God saw it, he saw that I needed something. And because it takes usually so much pain for me to get anything, that he allows the pain to happen. And instead of me jumping into a whiskey bottle like I did for 20 years, I have to feel that pain, and I have to search for what it is that he's trying to give me, because I know he's giving me something. I got to figure out what it is. Most of the time during my time in sobriety, egos played a large part of it. I just imagine that. There's a lot of arrogance, that I had to deal with, that I never really looked at it as ego. I never really looked at a lot of things as I was a humble guy. I really thought I was humble. Well, he had other plans. I just thought I knew what humility was. God, my God today has helped me with humility a lot along the way. And he's done it exactly the way I needed for him to do it, so that I would understand and I would hopefully get a little, you know. Um, but what I have discovered in my walk is that, you know, finally it dawned on me one day, you know, what a great gift I have. God never, he was never hurt me. He chose alcoholism as the vessel to him. That was just what he used for me. He didn't use what I thought. I thought he should use me being some outstanding bigwig at a church. You know, people need to see bigwigs. You know, I need to be one of those bigwigs, or I need to, you know, I need to do it like this, or I need to do it like that. You know, humility. That was another big thing about the humility part, was to allow him to show me and reveal me over time what it is that he was doing, and admitting and accepting I was an alcoholic was a big part of the step of humility he was working on me with. And then he revealed to me years into this thing that, oh my goodness, this isn't you're not spanking me. I mean, this is the gift you had given me. And I had no idea. So what a blessing that is in my life today. And I don't have to be fearful, and I do not have to, um, when I think about being an alcoholic and alcoholism, you know, it's no longer that curse that I always thought it was. You know, looking at my family and how they drank and all that. And, you know, I had family members said, we're all cursed. And, you know, and then that stuck, you know, as a kid, that kind of stuck. But, you know, they never really saw because no one ever really got into the program and stayed around long enough to see what it was really about. And I'm grateful today that, you know, I did my job. He he set that jug down in front of me, and he had the plug in it, and he said, do one thing. Can you keep the plug in the jug? I can do the rest of it. And I said, you're going to do everything else. He said, I just need you to keep that plug in that jug. And I said, well, man, that's not, I don't think that's going to be, I mean, that don't seem fair. He says, trust me, it's fair. Just keep the plug in the jug. I'll handle the rest of it. And I can tell you parts of my life that I decided I needed to deal with, that I would leave all this over here for you to deal with. And you can certainly see the parts that I messed with. I loused them up really good. And he allowed it to happen. And I can laugh about it today. You know, used to I'd have been so miserable about it, but I can laugh about it today because he just says, you know, you chose to hang on to that. And like everything you've done for the last 35 years, whatever you've hung on to, you haven't done very well with it. But yet you still think through ego that you can do it. And I just shake my head and I go, you're right. I get it. I know what he's up to. You know, he's not interested. We talk a lot about surrender. You know, he's not interested in just what I want him to have. You know, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. Well, Big Jim is sometimes slowly. So what I'm doing and what I'm learning is that, you know, he's after all of me. There is no little bits and pieces of me that he is looking at me hanging on to. Not going to happen. If I was a smart guy, I'd just turn it all over to him and just say to heck with it. But I'm so hard headed about some stuff. I just find it very difficult to do that. I can say this: he's won most of me, and he has really got my attention. And I love the journey. You know, I really, really love the journey because I see the parts in my life that he's taken care of. And I see the parts in my life that I'm still dabbling with. And I say dabble, I ain't running anything, but he's after them. But that's that free will stuff, when I guess when I'm tired of the pain, I'll hand it over to him. Um, so the journey has been amazing, and I'm so thankful that I've got to do it this way. Just some of us, and me in particular, have had to travel this road of I know everything and I don't need no help with anything. I'm totally self sufficient. I don't need anybody. And, how untrue that is, and how, you know, hanging around with people like Jay and Daily Reprieve, and they every time they talk, they make me think about something that keeps my life in perspective about Jimmy's just not in charge anymore, and Jimmy don't need to be in charge anymore. But through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I have grown in this spiritual realm that I was always looking for. I know a lot of you'll understand this. I did not differentiate between spirituality and religion. I did not think there was a difference. I thought religion was how you got it, how you would get the spiritual part. And really, I never even thought you had to be spiritual. I thought you just had to be super religious. Super religious would probably get you up into heaven. Is kind of what I thought. But again, that was my perception, and it was all wrong. But I do enjoy my church today. What Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me is create this wonderful relationship that I have with God. He and I are best friends today. We talk all day long. And I started going to church again, a small church right here by my house. And, I understand better. I understand the big book better, as I read. But I do listen to some of the normal people talk about it so that I can kind of hear their perception of it. And I don't always agree with what they're talking about. Sometimes my perception is a little different than theirs and what I'm looking at and what I read in the big book. And that's okay. I don't have to sit them down and tell them why they're wrong anymore. I can let them just think what they want to think, and I'm an open-minded guy. I don't ever know. I was taught that early on, to be open-minded, and I listen to everybody and everything. I just don't ever know when I'm going to hear what will make sense to me, and from where it comes from. I have one reason I keep going to Broadway is newcomers sometimes share some stuff that get me, with a little bit of time. They say stuff that reminds me of what it was like, but they also sometimes their perception is some awakening to me in what they have to say. So I still enjoy, listening to everyone, because I don't ever know. God speaks through people. He speaks through people at the group. He speaks through people at church. Excuse me. And I don't ever know exactly who he's going to use and what he's going to have them say. So it's important to me to keep my ears open and listen to what folks have to say. That's where I found my sobriety, was sitting in groups of Alcoholics Anonymous with a perception of God that was so distorted that finally I said, well, until I figure this God thing out, this AA meeting seems to work pretty good. These people are saying things that are making me think, and maybe that's how God's trying to talk to me. So, I do believe today he still does. That's what he does for me. So we have our personal time together, but I think he sends me to church and to meetings in order to sometimes let me hear what he has to say through somebody else that maybe I just hadn't thought about yet. And I'm grateful for that. I'm just grateful for the just being a little open-minded, not having to be the big boss, and making sure everybody understood if you're not doing it my way, you're probably going to fail. You know, that was just, I got four sons. I have four sons, twins that are 33, a 27-year-old, and a 21-year-old. And you could just imagine how them little fellas came up, you know. The twins, of course, they were the youngest at my earliest in my drinking career, and I always think about what they say, and they still tell me today. They used to sit in the window when I'd come home, and I had some tomato plants, and I had some jalapenos and some other stuff growing right there on my drive. And Andrew, one of the twins, would say, you know, we sat in that window every day waiting on you to get home. And he said, if you stopped and looked at your plants, it was a good day. We could come out and talk to you. But if you drove by them plants and you didn't stop and look, we hid. You know, how awful is that? That's the trauma that my alcohol was doing to my kids, that they had just figured out what days were better days. And they never knew if I was going to stop and not, but they prayed every day that I'd stop and look at them pepper plants. You're talking about making a man. I just wasn't a very good guy. But they love their daddy today. They love their da today. Um, they treasure me. They protect me. They look after me and love me. They've watched me go through some things where I've leaned hard on God. I don't mind crying a little in front of them today. Used to tell them men don't cry. I tell them today men do cry. And they're so proud of their dad because of that. They're proud of what Alcoholics Anonymous has done for their dad. And my youngest, the 21-year-old, lives here with me, and he already knows. He'll say on Monday nights, he'll say, "Hey, I'll see you in the morning," and he'll go, "Oh no, I won't see you in the morning. You got your 7 o'clock." That's after 10 years of no drink. He knows my meeting schedule better than I do, and he's going to make sure I'm up and I'm there. You know, he's like, oh yeah, tomorrow's 7 o'clock. Oh well, it's Tuesday evening. Yeah, I'll see you. I'm gonna pick up a pizza because you'll be at church. You'll go to your We're Not Saints on Tuesday evenings. You got two meetings on Tuesday. That's right. That's right. You know, they're going to do all they can do to make sure AA stays a part of old Daddy's life, because it's changed him 180 degrees. And we have a lot of conversations about it. We talk a lot about it, but it's all good. It's nothing at all. It's the journey and the proof that I have today. You know, I mentioned earlier, you know, I had a lot of proof of being an alcoholic. At 46 years old, I could look back and I could see the rip through the middle of the ground for 25 years where that tornado I had just blistered through, tearing up and squashing everything in my life, smashing the trees and the houses. There was total destruction behind me. And, you know, being around AA and growing like I have over the last few 24 hours, I can look at the proof of the program and how it works. You know, when I finally accepted this as a way of life, instead of just trying to figure out the routine, okay, I got to get up. I got to do this. I got to pray. I got to do this. I got to do, I was so stuck in, okay, I gotta make sure that every little thing checks off every day in order for me to stay sober. But that's, my sponsor said, when it starts being a way of life, it all changes. And that's what's happened. It's become my way of life. It's just natural. It's normal. It's good. I don't I don't have to be at an AA meeting anymore. I get to be at an AA meeting, you know, and that's the more will be revealed. You know, I've been told that and told that and told that. More will be revealed. And it surely does. Every day something happens, that God is showing me that He loves me and He's got me and His arms are wrapped around me nonstop, and just this gentle, gentle look in His face when He looks at me when I'm hurting. He just pulls me right through because he just wraps me up in His arms, and I'm okay. And I'm thankful that I hadn't, I've watched and I've done this in the past. I get a little well in the program, and I do like I used to do people in my life. I get a little better, and I don't need you anymore. I don't need that. I don't need that AA anymore. I feel better. But there's something about that desperation early on, and with a little humility, figuring out that part of it coming along. You know, AA introduced me to a God that I have today that I would have never had. How could I possibly turn my back on AA after what AA gave me, what it continues to give me? How could what I wouldn't be any sort of there wouldn't be any sort of sobriety in my life if that was what I chose to do with the program that saved my life and gave me a way to understand a God that is totally 180 degrees different from the God that I came in with. How wonderful is that? And I don't want to ever forget that. I don't want to ever forget my last drunk. I don't want to ever forget what AA has done for me. And I just want to every day be grateful for the things that I wouldn't normally be grateful for. That's the kicker. I can look around and I can tell you a few material things that I'm grateful for, but you know, all the jail cells, um, all the hardships financially, um, but with AA and God, I have stayed so strong for my family and my boys. And the reason was is, God saw fit for me to come back into the program and get serious about it and do things a little different, do things a little different. So I'm so thankful. And am I close enough, Jay?
You've got about 8 minutes left if you
Well,
want to use it.
okay. Um, wow, that's really flown by. When I keep my mouth shut and I let God talk, he's usually got a lot to say. And you can usually tell when I'm talking and when he's talking. Because when I'm talking, it's pretty obvious. I kind of ramble and I'll start two or three stories, and I might finish one of them. I just get back and forth. But God just keeps showing up in them when I start something that He says, "Oh, let me tell this one because this one's I got to make sure they hear this, and it don't need to come from you." So he does what he does, and he shows up and he shares in my life today, and um, I'm just so grateful for the program. I'm so grateful to still have hopefully a few years left in my life to continue growing and continue learning, and I really enjoy being with folks that are like me, that get me. I can scare a lot of people off with this kind of talk. But yeah, I know y'all get it. And that makes me that helps me. I feel so good when I'm able to share with like-minded folks and that get where I'm coming from. And but I've enjoyed my time here with y'all this evening. And Jay, I appreciate you invite me and let me come on so much. I always look forward to it. I look forward to seeing you on our Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I love you, man. So I guess I'll wrap it up.
Yay. So much, Jimmy.